Well, victims of Harvey have lost everything, and they're now being mocked by this controversial Politico cartoon. We showed you this first yesterday. Is it really time to get political? It's a good question. And here to debate that is conservative millennial Allie Beth Stuckey and National Communications Director for Working Families Party, Joe Dinkin. Thank you very much for joining us, both of you.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So let's begin with you, Allie. Allie, what do you think?
It is impossible to see this cartoon as anything other than what it is, anti-Christian and anti-conservative bigotry. This cartoon depicts conservative Christian Texans as these uneducated hicks. And if that wasn't bad enough, during one of the worst humanitarian crises that Texans have ever experienced. And you know, the timing of it isn't just horrendous because of the hurricane, but if you look closely, one of the men depicted in the cartoon is wearing a Confederate flag t-shirt. And in light of the recent events in Charlottesville, I think it's very clear that the artist of the cartoon is not only saying that Christian conservatives in Texas are uneducated hicks, but they're also racist. And at this time, I just can't think of anything more callous.
Joe, how do you answer that?
Well, look, we're all thinking about the people in Texas today who are suffering through the disaster of the hurricane there. And I don't think it's very nice to make fun of people when they're down, and I won't try to defend that. But I do think that the cartoon points to a real issue that's worth talking about, which is the hypocrisy from some Republican members of Congress, like Senator Ted Cruz, who said no and opposed an aid package for Superstorm Sandy, but are all too eager to get that same kind of federal help now, and are even being criticized by some of his fellow Republicans in Congress over that.
Refresh me on what the aid package for Hurricane Sandy would have included.
Would have included the billions of dollars that the New York and New Jersey coastlines,
amongst some other things too. Weren't there some other things added on to that? I think there were some other things added on to that. That's what Ted Cruz says. That's why he says that he did not, in fact, vote for it. Allie, go ahead.
You know, it would be one thing if you wanted to criticize Senator Cruz, maybe at another time, but I think Texans have actually welcomed all of the aid that President Trump has sent. As we know, he sent 24 federal agencies. There's more than 12,000 federal employees that are down in Texas on the ground helping us out. He's already tried to convince Congress to provide us with $6 billion just as a down payment to help Houstonians who are struggling here. So I think it's actually a very false equivalency, not only horrendous timing, but not really, as you said, a real issue that needs to be discussed, especially not right now. I just don't think that's an accurate picture of who Texans are.
Yeah. And Joe?
I guess I would say it's just pretty interesting to see all of the outrage about a political cartoon that a bunch of Beltway insiders are getting offended at, and not really talking about what's actually going on the ground in Houston, where President Trump, you know, is currently saying that he'll hold up a budget over his insane, never going to happen racist border wall, right? When that could slow down an aid package in Texas.
Straw man argument, and you know it.
Why is that a straw man?
This has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're not talking about politics. We're talking about human decency. And if you can't see that,
politics is how we determine when things like hurricane relief get funded. Politics is where President Trump just 2 weeks ago relaxed flood prevention standards on infrastructure. 2 weeks ago, he relaxed flood prevention standards on infrastructure.
Are you trying to say that you don't think that President Trump is doing enough to help the victims there of Harvey? Because you would be one of the only people that is saying that right now.
What I'm saying is that during a hurricane, during a humanitarian disaster like this, is one of the times where we really need government to work. Right?
And that's what people in Texas are saying. That's what they're thankful for.
Seeing government work. I want to see him say that there should be an aid package passed with no strings attached, not attached to the budget, not attached to any funding for the border wall. I want to see Trump admit the role of catastrophic climate change in making superstorms like this worse, when he continues to believe, as far as I know, that climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese.
Allie, final word.
This has nothing to do with the cartoon, and you know it. This actually doesn't have to do with Trump.
We did get way off base here. Yeah.
Has to do with human decency, and not just kicking people while they're down, but going after their character,
and questioning their religion.
Well, Allie, I'll agree with you there that I think the cartoon is a total distraction from the real issues on the ground in Texas.
We have to wrap it up, and our prayers for everyone there in Texas.